Welcome to another video by your friend, Matthew. So, on this channel, I make videos about spirituality and philosophy. I also make videos about the major arcana and the tarot cards. And I have video podcasts, interviews with interesting people where I ask them about their own spirituality or lack thereof. And it's always a fun dialectic between those guests. And so if you're interested in that sort of thing, you should check out other videos and other playlists that I've created on my YouTube channel. The podcast is called The Infinite Weird. So today I would like to talk about the heart in the context of spirituality and living the spiritual life, right? So basically, no matter what I learn, no matter what esoteric knowledge or wisdom I learn, no matter how much research or practice or reflection that I do in the context of different spiritual traditions, what I always come back to is the notion that the heart is the central principle that includes and transcends, maybe not even transcends, but the heart is the central force, the central principle, right? So one way to talk about that is to talk about the chakras. The heart chakra is in the middle, right? You have the root chakra, number 1, right? If we're talking about the 7 chakra system, you have the root chakra, number 1. I have a whole video about the chakras. You should check that out if you want to hear commentary on all of them. But you have the number 1 root chakra, number 2 sacral chakra, number 3 the solar plexus, number 4 the heart, number 5 the throat chakra, number 6 the third eye chakra, and number 7 the crown. All of them are important. All of them are necessary. A balance between them is a good idea. If any of them are overactive, then we should investigate that and explore that and try to find more balance. If any of them are closed, then we should investigate, explore, and find more balance and find ways to open them up. And the chakras can be interpreted as physiological. They can be, looked at as part of the energy body that we have, right? But they can also be explored kind of more psychologically, which is usually where I lean. That's the angle that I lean on usually. And so the heart chakra is in the middle of the upper 3 and the lower 3, right? You have the lower 3, and then you have the heart, and then you have the upper 3. So you could see the heart chakra as the bridge between the upper and the lower and the upper. And one kind of clear way to assess this is that the lower chakras are kind of all about personhood, right? To me, not to go too in detail, but I'll just say that the lower chakras are about digging into shadow work, digging into your own personal power, digging into your own embodiment, your own sexuality, your own sense of self, your sensory experiences, individuality, your own agency, all of those things, right? So the lower 3 are kind of all about personhood, and the upper 3 in some ways are all about kind of transcending your personhood, right? The upper 3 chakras are about active listening, communication, self-expression, but in the context of others, right? And of the world beyond your own personhood. The upper chakras are about intuition, imagination, the intellect, non-dual awareness, meditative awareness, mindfulness, mental clarity, those sorts of things, right? And so, the heart being the bridge between the upper and the lower. So check it out. If we get overly stuck in the lower three, if we get overly stuck in our own personhood, our own seemingly separate self, which, as we know, is not separate, even though sometimes it seems so. But if we get too locked in our own personhood, then opening the heart can lift us out of our own personhood, lift us out of self-absorption, lift us out of navel gazing, and bring our attention to others and to our environment and other living things and other living beings. And that's why that is the power of the heart in the context of getting us unstuck from the lower chakras, right? Now, if we get overly stuck in the upper chakras, if we get too disembodied, too in our head, too intellectual, too abstract, then opening the heart can bring us back down to earth. I hope that makes sense. It's pretty clear, right? It makes sense. I think so. It makes sense to me. And it's useful, it's a useful teaching. As I said in the other chakra video, like, it was really empowering and illuminating for me when I started to learn about the chakras, because it made me realize the different aspects of ourselves. And I think I'm somebody who kind of maybe gets too stuck in the upper chakras sometimes. And so learning about how all of those 7 centers, physically or psychologically or emotionally or spiritually, right? Those kind of 7 primary components of ourselves, and how they're all equally valid, equally important, and ultimately equally sacred. That was good for me to remember, because it made me want to have more balance, And so, relatedly, I think about the heart as the philosopher's stone. Now, I've been thinking that for a few years now, and I think a similar idea may have been expressed in a book called On Becoming an Alchemist. I can't remember the woman's name who wrote that right now. Forgive me. It is a good book. But I think that inspired by that book, I started to envision the heart as the philosopher's stone, which relates to what I was just saying about the heart, lifting us out of the lower and grounding us from the upper. Because, in alchemy, the philosopher's stone is that which transmutes base materials into gold, basically, right? And so if we see the heart as the philosopher's stone, then the heart transmutes the lower materials into something higher. And it also transmutes the upper materials into the manifest world, into manifestation. You could see the upper as like transcendence, the lower as manifestation. There's a bunch of different terms and framings that we can have for this sort of thing. So I hope that all makes sense. The heart as the bridge, the heart as the philosopher's stone. Now, it is going to be important for us to talk a little bit here about what does it mean to open the heart? What does that even mean? Right? Well, I think we all kind of know what that means. It's pretty self-explanatory. But let me try to unpack it from my own subjective vision and experience with opening the heart. Number one, my heart is not always open, or at least not always fully open. It's hard to have a fully open heart because it can be overwhelming to take in the world with a fully open heart, right? But I would say that opening the heart means, among other things, it means recognizing the vividness of another person's existence. Realizing that other people are just as important as ourselves and have just as complex inner lives as ourselves. And when we kind of see people in context and we take into consideration their pasts and their traumas, their hang-ups, their blockages, their conditioning, their programming, when we acknowledge that in ourselves and others, then we can be more sensitive to others. We can be more compassionate and empathetic toward others. Not in some corny way, not in a plastic way, but in a real way. Just the honest act of seeing ourselves and others in all of our fullness. That's why when we're overly self-absorbed, we can't see the fullness of others because we're kind of blinded, or, our vision is obscured because we're just looking at ourselves. So by kind of unobscuring our vision and seeing the fullness of others, then that is a way of opening the heart. I would say another way of opening the heart is being more open and attentive and sensitive to our environments in general, right? A lot of times if we're walking, when I'm walking down the street, I'm not looking at the things around me. I'm looking at the thoughts in my head. So I'm missing most of the stuff around me. And even when I walk down the same street over and over, for periods of time, if I'm walking down the same sidewalks and stuff, sometimes I'll snap out of my blindness, and I will see things that have always been there, but that I didn't recognize because I was too stuck in my head or something, right? So opening the heart is opening our attention and awareness to the reality around us. And that is a way, too, that's a way of lifting us out of our self-absorption, because we're seeing the fullness of the reality outside of us, the reality in our vision. And it's also a way of snapping us out of our heads and our abstraction, so it grounds us, because we're seeing the grounded reality in which we live. And I would say that is a version of opening the heart. So those are two primary ways that I see the practice of opening the heart. There's this Christian mystic, Cynthia Bourgeault, I think is her name. She's amazing. I've been watching YouTube videos from her recently, and she's great. I really enjoy her vision. But she talks about the heart a lot too, and she talks about the presence of the heart in the history of Christian mysticism. And she talks about how it's not just a metaphor, and she says it's dangerous to just think of the heart as, in an emotional context. She says it's more of like actually seeing or living from, almost like on a physiological level, kind of like shifting our attention and shifting our focus from being kind of in our heads to actually almost kind of shifting our awareness so that it is, what's the word for it? Shifting our awareness so that it is its orientation is from kind of the middle of our bodies, the heart space. I know that's very abstract, but like it reminds me of probably 12 or 13 years ago. I was playing disc golf with my friend, and I was putting and trying to get it in the I was just practicing putting, and I was trying to get it in the basket, and my friend said, try to just focus on your stomach. This is what he said. So it's not quite the heart space, but it's similar. He said, focus on your stomach and throw from there. And I started doing that, and I was like making all the putts. So it's interesting and fun to experiment with that. Lately, after listening to Cynthia, I've been kind of periodically experimenting with trying to just shift my attention from emanating from the upper space, emanating from the head. I'm shifting it so that it's like emanating from the heart. And that shift in awareness does change our experience of reality. So that's part of it too. But I don't want this to be too long. It's coming up on 17 minutes, which is my favorite number. So I'm going to wrap this up. But I just wanted to make sure to make a video about the significance of the heart as, the central principle and force in the spiritual life. No matter what we learn, no matter what information or knowledge that we gain, if we don't connect that knowledge and wisdom to the heart, then it's kind of hollow, I would say. So until next time, peace, love, harmony. Take care of yourselves.